Rob Lee here, folks, from MTR Podcasts, and this month's presenting sponsor is Double Dutch Boutique. Double Dutch is vintage-inspired flair with a contemporary cut. The boutique features sought-after independent designers from around the world, as well as assorted goods produced by local artists and makers. Double Dutch promises a shopping experience just as unique as its clothes. Pop on over to www.doubledutchboutique.com today for their latest goods. Welcome to Getting to the Truth in This Art. I'm your host, Rob Lee, and today's guest is the founder, director, and principal curator of the American Visionary Art Museum, Rebecca Hoffberger. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
Hi. Good morning. How are you?
I'm okay. Hold it. Let me do this thing. I can't believe I showered for you.
That's great. I put on a tie.
I want to thank you for something you didn't know you did for me. I love to laugh. It's like the only vacation I get, right? And,
right.
So I didn't know Patrice O'Neill. And so I fell asleep. I had to have two memorial services yesterday. It was like a day of, emotional, our longest running volunteer passed away, and we honored him in the morning. And then I had another friend who passed, and all of that. And then I fell asleep, and all my clothes, all the lights on, the TV on, as soon as I got home. And I didn't wake up till 5. And then I was reading about what you love, because I want to know, the person I'm talking to and with.
Totally.
And I want to thank you because I watch like everything on YouTube. Patrice O'Neill, did you know we honored Louis Black? And I'm a huge for his social justice work as well of Dave Chappelle. And you may be familiar with how Oscar Wilde said, if you're going to tell people the truth, make them laugh or else they'll kill you. And
that works.
It's like why there was always a court jester, honestly, not as just a diversion, from everyday life, but to really to communicate big truths in ways that people can take it in.
That's one of the and thank you. That's one of the things that I've heard from just different people that I know that's an ability or a trait that I have that I don't really think I hear it from other people, that some of the stuff I talk about in my other podcast, it's usually kind of weird news. It has a particular kind of irreverent slant to it, but it's generally, this is what's happening in the world around us. And these are real stories. And they're going to make you laugh. They're going to, make you, it's a little cringeworthy, but at times the main goal of the stuff is, are you thinking about this? Are you seeing this? These are the people that you're around regularly. These are your friends, your neighbors, your family. And the weird doesn't stop. Even with coronavirus, the weird does not stop.
Oh, no, it's escalating. Do you know who Landis Expandis is?
I think I received pizza from him once. I think he was delivering from Joe Square. But yes, I know of him.
Oh, he's amazing. He was like the lead singer for Almighty Senators, and he has his own YouTube station. And for health reasons, he's not kind of going out a lot. But he taught himself, how to. I think he's absolutely a genius. I have to tell you, he performs all the parts. You think he has 2 backup men, and it's just him in costume. And he knew how to like put it in. And so he did the best 2 songs on COVID. And the one is Back the Hail Up. And it's like a silver. It's like, and he has the most beautiful, articulate voice. And then his other is what is it called? Sleep schedule. And the idea is that when you don't have to go to work because it's COVID or whatever. Yeah. He says, I got my wine glass next to my coffee cup, I have to, and I put him in my new sleep show. And what's amazing is that many geniuses throughout time of all sort in science and engineering, and Mary Shelley dreaming up Frankenstein because of a dream. I juxtaposed him with this world famous virologist named Dr. George Church, who's a narcoleptic. but he says that he gets his best ideas when he in that in-between state. And it's the same for Landis Expandis, like his songs and his paintings, which are superb. But I can't even believe I didn't know about them before. I just knew his music, so we put that in the show and we juxtaposed, because a lot of people, like, I ask you, have you ever had a dream come true? Did you ever have a dream and then later it came to pass?
I would suppose, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of one right off, but it's like the dreams are vivid sometimes, and it's all of these different things flowing by. But I'm sure like there have been things that have happened, and I'm like, I dreamed about this. This happened in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I used to be at war with sleep, like, oh my gosh, I'll sleep when I'm dead kind of thing. Right. And, I would truly, all the latest research. For example, Matt Walker discovered that when men who sleep 5 hours a night on average or less have very small testicles, and that's because, FYI, it's true for women too. Our hormones are kind of balanced at night. When we're in REM sleep, where our little eyelids are fluttering and we're dreaming, protein synthesis, that's the time in the 24 hours that protein synthesis is going on in the body the most as well. So it's like, it's not sleep or an escape. It's like it's doing all these fabulous things for us. And so our new show really deals with that. And then 3 bedroom sets by individual visionary artists. A lot of us are frustrated curators, and it's amazing when people take, kind of charge of their domain and what they've done.
I already feel like this is going to be like a fire interview because I want to say, like, during the course of this week, like the sheer goal, and I think I put it in the initial email, but the sheer goal of this podcast, this series, is interviewing artists, entrepreneurs, and just people I think are driving in an integral part of the culture here in Baltimore. And I think it's important. I know that. What's the whole thing? Anger is the energy for change. So, and this is something I got from my therapist years ago, because I used to get just really annoyed, and I was like, this is stupid. And he was like, you must want to do something about it. I was like, fair. So when I want to say, it's a little over a year ago, maybe 18 months at this point, when Trump was talking very ill of Baltimore City and that whole back and forth with Elijah Cummings, I had like Easy Jackson on, and I had James Nasty on, and they had a very vulgar, very rough response to a lot of the stuff, but they were very right too. And I was like, I can keep doing this I'm a 6'4", 300-pound black man. I was like, I'm already scary. So instead of threatening someone and yelling and all of this different stuff, how about I just highlight and show and disprove your point, and disprove the point you're trying to make, and show people who are doing cool things here, and show that we have a lot of talent here that gets overlooked, because I think Baltimore is used as a buzzword. We're used as like Chicago was a few years back of, we want to talk about a place that, because it's not all Chicago. They mean South Side. They mean where, and I realize this, and I'm unabashed in saying it, if it's a mostly black city, that's the issue. And that's the dog whistle kind of thing that I hear. And it frustrates and annoys me, because I don't think we're unique, but I think we need to be normalized. I don't think we're too different from any other city. Like, we have issues like any urban place does. We have a lot of talent, and we have individuals here. We have personalities here. And I think that gets washed away. And that's what I want to do this podcast, to show that we have artists here. We have people that are doing dope things. And I realized, especially during COVID, that I'm not bad at networking. That was a skill that I was afraid of, because I've had a few direct sales jobs. I'm like, I'm not doing well. But I guess in going out there and pitching, because I've been podcasting it'll be 12 years in February.
Wow.
And it's something that I'm very passionate about. One of those, I was rejected by the School of the Arts too young, and I was like, I need to do something else. And I got into like playing with audio, and all of this stuff is self-taught. And having my own equipment and building out like a studio and all of this different stuff, that's kind of where I'm at. So like earlier in the week, the Kirk Butts, who's at BOPA, he reached out to me and he was like, we should talk. I was like, yes, we should, and see where that goes.
Yeah. Good. You know, the thing is, I do think Baltimore's unique and has been like, I have to say I've been part of, I'm old enough. I just turned 68, you know, and it was so interesting because I've been through like 8 rebrandings of Baltimore. And when I first started the museum, I went to this one meeting and it was like, oh, you know, we should have a fox hunting. I'm not kidding. You know, I'm almost like, really, you know, but since then there have been so many lame, like brand monikers for the city of Baltimore. I mean, really, and they pay every time, you know, they pay Faith Popcorn come in and then they pay like $1 million and then they feel then obligated to make posters of it and stuff. So I want to do, I mean, just pro bono, my staff and I really, you know, I think we've really nailed, we won like the top design over all the museums that have $1 budgets in the country over and over again. More first prizes than Smithsonian, and a lot of that's also our Teresa Segretti. You know, I give her an idea and she just runs with it. You know, but it is a cauldron. Did you ever read the Antero Piatella's book? His first one was Not in My Neighborhood, about redlining and the legacy of Baltimore, you know, because that really, from the developers of Homeland and whatever, the law, they found a way to make neighborhood exclusive by law. You know, no Jews, no blacks, you know, that happened in Maryland and kind of spread across. So that's not a great legacy, but,
no.
But when I read his newest book, which anybody who loves Baltimore should read, The Ghost of Johns Hopkins. Oh my gosh.
Taking a note.
I'm telling you, like you'll have to throw up in some piece. I made me throw up because, part of it is our history is so dark. And this is well before it was a primarily African-American city. So when I was asked to like participate in this new moniker for Baltimore thing, you know, yet again. And after I read it, I said, remember that old song, Bad to the Bone?
Yeah.
Like, that's young Baltimore, bad to the bone. But actually, another person was a great sense of humor you should interview, because he had the best response, I thought, to Trump about when he was dishing with, Elijah Cummings, who I adored. By the way, did you ever? I hate to skip up, but did you ever watch Elijah Cummings bringing Michael Cohen to tears? Because of his kindness to Michael Cohen. It was like one of those, I'm working on a show called Healing and the Art of Compassion. And I want to just put that in the screen that people see that how powerful loving kindness is. But what's interesting is, like, if you really look at the history of Baltimore, I used to do a tour intro to people coming, because we get a lot of international, national guests, and it's hilarious. We say, well, how did you hear from us? You're there with your children who are 12 and 10 from Germany. You're here. Sure. Oh, we're here to take the Wire tour.
That's great.
They got in a plane with their 2 kids to come to Baltimore to take the Wire tour. It was like, whoa, like that's an interesting, psychology there. But, the great thing about, as John Winters said too, of being, number 1 in VD, do you know that we had been, judge number 1 in VD? And he said, well, at least you could get a date here,
Going for the gold.
So, there is something. I'm so glad when we're number 1 in something horrible, because I'd rather be number 1 in something horrible than number 2, or 3. Yeah. And because if the creative people can make a change here, it means anywhere on earth can really change for the better. And that's why I went and studied Medellin, Colombia, because it was the murder capital of the world. You know, I mean, it was the worst. I mean, much worse than here. But you know, they had the number one medical facility in all of that huge part of the world. The first successful kidney transplant was in Medellin, you know, and they had very, very wealthy people. And then they had abject poverty and misery and gangs. And I was like, wow, we have to learn from them, because it's now the most successful, with 15 years out from the change, a shift to the most studied turnaround city. And so I wanted to know, what did they do? Because, and so we did a whole year on Big Hope for Baltimore, lessons learned from Medellin, you know, and there is so much potential in the city of Baltimore. And, but there's a lot, unfortunately, I don't know, there's a lot of lameness, you know, too. You know, there really is, I have to say. And so, you know, but there's these pockets of absolute genius, and we don't treat them very well.
Well, the lameness thing, I wanted to interject because you mentioned the slogans, and I remember one that caught my attention. And so my background was in marketing, and I'm currently a data analyst. And one of the things that I was working heavily in marketing at the time for like Verizon, and I remember that whole Baltimore, get in on it. I was like, I need a new job. I need to work here because this is bad. And you know, being a resident I was like, this is being a lifelong resident from here. It's like, this means nothing at all. This is just throw this here. And I remember the thing about the joke, because like I'm in my mid-30s. So having that whole Baltimore, the city that reads, and all of that stuff, growing up with that, I was like, does that work either? And it's just, to your thing, it's like lame stuff that's just there. It's like, how can we brand this? It's like, how can we affix a brand to something? It's like when someone's in music or they're trying to create a fan base, they'll give their fan base a nickname. And it's just like, you're really reaching to try to have some identity related to this property. Mm-hmm. It's not about what they're doing. Right. It's about them being a commodity. And if you can find a way for people to feel included, suddenly there you go. Yeah. And that's what this brand is. The Baltimore Readers or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I would love to hear what you come up with, because you've been digesting this city for a long time. So
I have some thoughts. We were, and I have like a bunch of questions I'll ask you, but we had, I was asking my, one of my good friends, I was like, so what is the iconography for Baltimore? And I was like, outside of crabs, I was like, I don't want crabs on there. I was like, what can we have that's different from that? No crabs, no Utz, no Natty Boh, none of that stuff. And we were bumping our heads against the wall. And then when I did one of the questions I used to ask on this particular podcast was like, who's the Black celebrity representative for Baltimore? And like a lot of the guests, they were like, I have no idea.
Well, Billie Holiday is much more popular in Europe than she is here. You know, she's iconic. And when we did our show, High on Life, Transcending Addiction, you know, she had this great, you know, she was very abused as a little kid and just went through so much. And yet she said this thing when people were critical of her drug habit. She said, I never hurt anybody but myself. Mm. You know, there are iconic people, and I love the masks that the daughters of Elijah Cummings have made, which were better than this. They're really beautiful, you know, masks and stuff. No, there's so much here. You know, what I would try to introduce Baltimore. You know, there are all these, like the Catholic See is here, the Basilica of the Assumption, you know, and the largest contiguous Jewish community even more than New York in terms of its pack, and the Quaker movement that was so strong here, and the first Ouija board. And then when Madeline Murray took prayer out of school, the most famous atheist ever, she lived in Parkville, right? So you have this, this out there, you have, and I love that. I call Baltimore really a cauldron of, such a brew that's either so sublime or so poisonous. And I can see how curious you are, and I am probably to a fault. I mean, I'm constantly wanting to understand more. So read that book, and then I want to talk, and let's bring on Antero, who the man who wrote The Ghost of Johns Hopkins. Because did you know that Baltimore was like the headquarters in all of America for grave robbing? Like, we were really good at it. And the railroad, you've heard of the term rot gut. So what would happen was people would get buried, and boom, by that night, because fresh corpses earned more than kind of old dried up ones. So they would have this efficiency thing where they would dig up the head area and then put a big fishing hook down and like pull up the body, from this little space, and and then they would sell it to the med schools, both locally, but up in Connecticut, Yale, and then to Harvard, and they used our B&O railroad, and they would put all these corpses with alcohol to preserve them to go up, and then they would sell. This is the gross part. They would sell the alcohol, rot gut is where it comes from, to the med students.
Okay, that's actually kind of great. Why is this not a property that's being filled? This is the thing. I feel like at times on one of these, I have 3 ideas that are just sitting in my Google Drive of very Baltimore oriented stories. They're pastiches of other stuff that we've known and seen. One is a pastiche of the Warriors, and it's called the Saints of Station North, and they're solving mysteries in that part of Baltimore City. And it's just this one line in it where it's the only way we can get out of the city is this thing about Baltimore being so small, but people in it is I don't want to go to West Baltimore. Mm-hmm. So it's no one goes to Owings Mills. I'm not going to Owings Mills. And one of the characters is saying it that line from Valley Girl. And it's I don't want to go to the Valley. I don't want to go to Owings Mills. Uh-huh. And I was it's very niche. It's very specific, but I like that we have all of these rich things, these rich historical things that are weird. And that it's you start digging, you can get a fair amount of content out of this in terms of movies, in terms of books and things like that. But I think that maligned reputation I mentioned earlier is a piece of it. It's just people don't know, and the people here do, but
I know, but
I guess they're muted.
Sanitized thing, which comes up with these dumb slogans instead of really, what would be good is to look at what are the most memorable city monikers. Keep Austin weird. That was so good. Yeah. I think Portland stole it too. But they were the first, and they really embraced that. Virginia's for lovers, we know. But John Wooders, I was on briefly on the Chamber of Commerce. And I had read in the first book John Wooders had ever written that he said he dreamed that he would partner with the Chamber of Commerce. And he wanted to see a bumper sticker that would say, "Come to Baltimore and be shocked." And I wanted, like a whole thing where you would have all sorts of diverse people, characters looking shocked, absolutely shocked. And then what they love about Baltimore that nobody knows, and it would be playful and fun. And we had a celebrity, and then his, Hairspray did so well on Broadway. And when you make a gazillion bumper stickers, they're less than 2 cents a piece. And so we could have put that on every, just like Bertha's Mussels, you'll be driving in Ireland and you'll see a bumper sticker saying, whatever it is, eat Bertha's Mussels, right? Yeah. So I think you should go take over. I think they're looking for the Reginald Lewis Museum, because you have that love of Baltimore and the quirkiness. Put your hat in, and I'll help anything. I found out through there's Philip. I'm just old and forgetting is listening, but the great, historian of Black culture for Maryland. And he told me about Princess Wee Wee. She was the most perfect small woman ever treated like a queen in circus life, and was introduced to Queen Victoria. Of course, she married a giant because you got to go there, right? But she was like perfectly proportioned, and she was, I think, only like 37 inches tall. But everything was perfect on her and dressed beautifully. So there are so many stories to be told. I mean, people don't, I wish more kids growing up in Baltimore who are aware of the very serious inequities, driving while Black, all of that, would know how we treated gypsies. The fine in 1900, if you were a gypsy, was $1,000 if you were caught in Baltimore city limits after dark. And then
what?
Yeah. I know. I mean, it was like they really hated gypsies. And what's interesting is there was this spirited girl, a young woman from Roland Park who'd gone to Bryn Mawr, really. And she ran away with the gypsies and married the gypsy king. And then wrote the syndicated column on life with the gypsies. And of course, this was the worst thing she could have done, right? But what's interesting is that her dad, who was this, scion of society, said, well, I've gotten to know him, and he loves my daughter, and he's actually a wonderful person, And that story, like the true stories you would get at. So I'm begging you, because the Reginald Lewis has like a quarter of the visitors we do, but they get $1.4 million more dollars from the state every year than we do. We have had to make miracles with the little money we have. So,
there's a connection sitting there.
Huh?
There's a connection sitting there. I went to Morgan, and they sponsored one of the years I was there. So they sponsored our class one of the years I was there. So, hey, remember me from back in the day? More hair, less of a beard, struggling to finish midterms. Hey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I just think you have that love. And frankly, a good museum is muse oriented, is that divine inspiration that comes and manifests in music and medicine and invention of all sort, not just art. And I think you would make it so alive. So throw your hat in, honestly.
I'll do that.
Because you've been doing the story behind this, Baltimore for so long. And, a little walk on the wild side about the true history of Baltimore and who was brave enough. For example, everybody knows Hopkins, but I did a story on called the period in which it was Camelot, because 4 years before Hopkins opened its doors, 2 African-American physicians opened Christ Church Hospital. And it was open to everybody. And because they were kind of not welcomed at Hopkins later, the most of the medical staff under him were European physicians, and everybody got along. And they, people don't realize in the early days of Hopkins, they didn't want to treat Italians. They didn't want to treat the Irish. All of this was like, riffraff. And it wasn't that Johns Hopkins, the original Johns Hopkins was Quaker. He gave the money wanting it to be for everybody, and specifically for those who couldn't pay, and that it was to be one hospital for people of color as well. And, as soon as he got, left the money, and they didn't get it together until later, they, were like, we're not doing that. And there was a separate, until I think it was 66, really late, there was the separate, hospital for the coloreds. And I've offered to do a truth and reconciliation process with Hopkins for like 15 years. And I'm thinking
I may have some things about Hopkins.
Because it's not to dump on them only, but I think they really need their story told, and it would be a really healthy process to look. And you read a lot about that in the Ghost of Johns Hopkins, of where we've come from. Because I think when people say to me, "What's the most creative thing you've ever seen?" and they expect me to say some painting or play or something, I always go truth and reconciliation process. and I got to work with Archbishop Tutu here in our show on character, right? And it was called Race, Class, and Gender. 3 things that contribute 0 to character, because being a schmuck is an equal opportunity for everybody. And it was the most beautiful show. He cried when he saw what we did, That's great.
So I'll be remiss if I don't do the duty. This is a great conversation, firstly, but if I don't do the duty, then my not sponsors, I'm trying to get sponsors, but my not sponsors will like, hey, Rob, you didn't do your show the way that you usually do it. So I got a few questions I want to ask, a few about the museum. And a few about your work and like your kind of connection to Baltimore and all of that stuff. And then we'll go from there. And also, one of the things I like to integrate in the show is, a segment I like to call, shameless plugs. So as we wrap up, you have anything that you want to plug, Instagram, come there, we got anything virtual going on, all of that stuff. That's the time to do it. So, could you describe the mission or the vision? What was the thinking and coming up with AVAM? I like to use acronyms.
Okay, real quick then. The cornerstone for me from the very beginning were really 2 things, but the cornerstone was this notion that I express as saying creative acts of social justice is life's highest performance art. Because to make real positive change is the hardest thing. You have to be fiercely creative because there's so many things pushing back from all sides to kind of keep things as they are. So you have to be kind of a genius to make social change. So that was one notion. The second was that what fuels evolutionary creative invention of all sort. And for me, that has been intuition, the ability to listen, not to, I'm not anti-academic, but I'm saying what we look for in our artists who are self-taught. And the people we pull in are people who are fresh thinkers and who may not even watch themselves. Some of them don't even think of themselves as artistes. They're just building the Garden of Eden in the backyard for the last 40 years and they don't care whether you like it or not. They're like really wholeheartedly, devoted. And then my bias is I've always loved science. And I love how often it's the backyard tinkerer that will come up with, not the big funding behind it. We'll see the elegant solution. So I'm very interested in hypnagogic state. Where do people get their ideas? It's usually this. When we did Holy H2O Fluid Universe, we said, do you get your best ideas in the shower? A lot of people get their best ideas. You smile, right? For some people, it's when they're on long drives. Like there's something about, you're paying attention to the road, but your other part of your mind is free. And again, this mining of our sleep. And sometimes you'll get a great idea at night, right? And you wake up and go, I won't forget this. And if you don't write it down, usually it's gone. And you think,
have a notepad at my nightstand all the time.
Oh, that's so great. That's great.
Because I there's something really goofy that I'm working on. I finished the first 10 issues of it. I did this comic book that's about cats that are lawyers. It's ridiculous.
Say it again. It's what?
It's about cats that are lawyers. And it's just me working in just different things. And it all came out of a conversation with my girlfriend. There's there's a generational thing there. I guess she's Gen X and I am not. I'm younger than Gen X. So I'm like, you never saw this? And she's like, I've never seen this cartoon. I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, look, there has to be a judicial wing in SWAT Cats. It's this cartoon I used to watch back in the early 90s. And I was like, there's no special kittens unit, no attorneys that claw. And I was like, that's the idea. That's the freaking idea. And I started writing down things. And the characters in it are based on a couple of my friends and myself. Wow. And it's a way of kind of working different things together. And it's kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier, that dream thing where I wanted to be in comics when I was younger. I would do all of it. I would do the writing, the inking, all of the stuff. And just some person was just like, this is kind of childish. I was like, well, I'm 11. So, it was one of those things. And coming at 34 at the time and finding a different way to do it. It's like she and I write the comic, and I have an artist that does the illustration, and it's a webcomic. And I think once we do a few more issues, there's some stuff in the middle we want to kind of add back in, like stuff that wasn't there initially, just kind of binding stuff. We're going to do like printouts of it. And, I've talked to a few different like local vendors and said, yeah, we'd love to have this in our store.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is my backdoor way of being a comic guy.
Yeah. Well, let us know, because that's, most of my staff, I'm a dog person, but most of my staff are really like cat people, because they can leave them all day. But I like things that can feel guilt, so you're perfect with pairing cats that don't feel a lot of guilt with lawyers, right? That's a natural marriage, right? So we did in the Great Mystery Show, I devoted a hall to the mystery, how mysterious cats are, going back to Egypt and all of thinking they were, gods. But what's interesting is the biology, and that they evolved a particular parasite called Toxoplasmosis gondii. Toxoplasmosis gondii, really important for your comic. This is going to help you, particularly for the snidely whiplash aspect of lawyers. And so what it is when they the parasite comes out in their pee-pee. So if they're in alleys, they kind of pee all over, and then the rats that ingest food which has had this. And the parasite enters their body. Instead of running away from cats to save their lives, they fall in love and goo eyes with the cat, and the cat can just eat the mice, eat the rats easily. So it was a kind of an evolutionary helper that evolved. And what's interesting is that people who have cats and who are less than clean with them, often they will get Toxoplasmosis gondii. So I did the mystery of the cat ladies, who have 127 cats and they're eating dog for themselves, but everything is for their cats, and there is this thing. They even think that it causes it's a underlying cause, one of the causes of schizophrenia. So look up Toxoplasmosis gondii. And so isn't that cool?
That's given me an idea, because one of the things I'm having trouble with, because I want to do the way I ended, and who thought I would be talking about this? The way I ended the first installment was they decided to close down a law firm and all of this stuff, but they want to go into business for themselves and be like privatized instead of working for a law firm or what have you. So I want the first case to have something to do with Garfield. And I just wanted to be like a guy that only kills on Mondays, a cat that only kills on Mondays. And I want that in there. It's ridiculous, but I want it in there. So I think maybe having that Toxoplasmosis
gondii.
Gandhi would be an interesting way, because we've already introduced rats in here as like they own a company. So I can have that in there, and it's in here. Is now I need to just get it down to paper.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. I'm using that.
Yeah, because you could have them like when they do a client pitch, that the week before they send them like a goodwill gift of chocolates, or whatever. Yeah. And then they bring them in and they're hanging on every word.
Yes.
So there you go. But it's actually based in fact.
Yeah. So I'm gonna use that. That's after I finish with this interview, I'm gonna write this down, because I've already wrote down that piece, but I see it in my head, and I think that would be, by the way, my version of the dream. It's like, I think visualizing whatever it is. Like, I remember when I was younger, I would do like spelling bees and things like that, and it's always being the biggest kid in your class is very hard to hide. So
what again?
6'4".
Well, that's a good height, actually.
So it's hard to hide. So it's just like, all right, I'm going to be in the front of this. I'm not going to be missed, and so on. So I needed to start doing this visualization in my head as to, this is going to go well. I'm going to be really good at this. And it extends to these other things, namely these creative things that I try to do. So,
well, in the words of the producers, if you got it, flaunt it. And you got it, really.
Well, thank you.
This is good.
So and I touched on childhood a little bit there for myself. So do you have any advice you would give, like that you have now, that you would give your younger self, maybe when you got started, or maybe even like, you know, like early?
Dentist. That's really, I heard that Tom Hanks said this, he said floss. But I would just say, from dentists, because once, you only get that one set of adult teeth, and, if they mess it up, you're in trouble forever, So that I would say, probably, I don't know, because I haven't matured very much, honestly. Here I am, 68, but I read things I wrote. I had a very unusual childhood. I got into college early and instead went off to France without speaking French and never having taken an airplane, and to study with Marcel Marceau. And the only word I went with was cotton candy in French, to show you how young I was, which is father's beard, ba 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 ba. And, but my idealism was so strong from such like I was a protector of people who were being bullied, like from earliest days, and I don't really feel like I'm very different. I guess we should have evolved more, but I think, I came in and I wanted to remember what I knew before I was born in this life. And I had wonderful parents, but I still had a sense of being connected to something else. So the museum is really a manifestation of everything that ever really moved me or touched me. I don't go by trends ever. I really beg, creator, every year, what is going to be needed. What people are going to walk in the door. What is the theme I should be doing? And then it like clicks. I know that sounds funny, but so when I did Holy H2O Fluid Universe, we opened more Class 5 storms. Then the Indonesian tsunami, the biggest ever recorded. Last week was Katrina in New Orleans. The whole year was about water stories. When I did The Art of War and Peace, Toward an End to Hatred, boom, 9/11. You have to decide well before. It's always... and when I did the parenting show and Art Without a Manual, what happened? Headlines: separation of children at the border from their families. So it's like, but that it wasn't happening when I picked the theme. So I'm always alert for what I'm supposed to do. And then I it's scary because I got to put it together fast. I only have less than 9 months, which is very tight in the world of museums. They work 2 and 3 years out. And, and then I didn't realize it was the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and we're keeping up because we don't have the money to switch it out, but we had to be closed for 6 months because of COVID. The Secret Life of Earth show. It's the largest science art show on climate change and the state of our Earth anywhere. And it's gorgeous. And then the other show that I want to, because we've talked about the sleep show, the Earth show, is the Esther show, where I juxtapose what happened to Esther in her survival, which is so sweetly told. It's not like, hollowed eyes and stuff. Her embroideries that she did only for her children, not to get in a museum, 36 embroideries, her tale of survival, but so lovingly done with what happened in Rwanda, where you had people of the same pigment skin, but you have Hutus and Tutsis. And what happened was that the Hutu army actually engineered the plane crash of their own Hutu president. But to deflect guilt, they said, "Oh, it was so terrible, Tutsi, And so what happened? 800,000 people, human beings, were mostly macheted to death in 100 days. 800,000 in 100 days. And so I have that and what we did to Native Americans, what happened to Matthew Shepard, and the big headline is from Terry Pratchett. It says, "Evil begins when we begin to treat people as things, either as sex objects or as property or as employees that can be discarded, and we don't have to worry about job conditions." So it's such a truism, it's like every evil can be traced back to when a human being, thought of another as a thing.
It's one of those things where you don't have to do too much work to get to that, by the way. Like every now and again, like it's a lot of TV, a lot of stuff that we're watching and that my girlfriend and I are watching. And it's always, when there's a show with like this charismatic leader, it's always, she points out, it's like, she was like, why is it always someone needs to have sex with you, you're running something, and it's maybe young girls involved.
Yeah.
It's like, why is it always this is a prerequisite for your leadership and you're touching God or whatever the thing is. And it's insane.
Well, there are some notable exceptions to that, but you're right. I think that, this is really interesting. Okay. This is a keeper for you. So what have we done? We every year I've picked a theme that has had the power to impact human beings, their behavior for good and for bad. But okay, so it's been religion in all face beautiful, from atheism to Zoroastrianism, respect for diversity of belief, money, treasures of the soul, who is rich. Religion, money, government, in the Freedom Show, all sorts of these powerful things, that have sway over our lives. And the idea is that you realize these powerful things are never intrinsically good nor bad. Religion isn't all good, government isn't all good, money isn't all good, parenting isn't all good. The subtitle of that, Parenting and Art Without a Manual, was the good, the bad, the horrific, and the sublime, right? It's like sometimes you're lucky getting a saint for a parents, and then sometimes you get predators. Even though they may have gone to Harvard, make a lot of money, play good tennis, look good, smell good, they could still be the worst parent you could ever nightmare come into. So it was such an honest discussion on the essence, I try in our exhibitions to orchestrate that everybody comes in and brings their life experience to the viewing. They're not just going, oh, I like that piece, or I don't like that. They're like, guided to think, well, what do you think about this? And, so all of the great powers are never, again, intrinsically good nor bad, but they magnify intention. So we lay out what is the issue, and then we throw at the feet of people kind of the gauntlet of, how be aware of how this impacts your life.
Yeah, I like to look at certain things like these. This is neutral, this is a neutral thing. Like it's like, oh, okay, cool. This is neither good nor bad. The people that are in that spot, it's them. I try to use that as a way to make things more similar than different, because when you start getting into the weeds of, oh, this is related to, well, these people in this position, let's just say white men in this position, they're inherently this. I don't know that, but I know that the role that they may be in tends to bring these traits out in people. Like if they're in this power position, they're in this top role, that's like, oh, well, I feel like I should have more than you. I should have this. I was like, if you start replacing people and say, okay, let's say black women are in that role moving forward, then those same traits may come out of black women. Right. We don't know. We don't see it generally because that's how this thing has been structured. But I think it's more so the circumstance, not necessarily the person. I try to look for the humanism there, I suppose. Or
you get a Clarence Thomas, you get someone who, so that's why it is never a case. The only Monday from the very beginning that we would ever stay open was Dr. Martin Luther King Day. And we make it this huge thing. We attracted up to 5,000 people. It was always free that day because I was so upset that on Dr. King's Day, we were celebrating his life and his vision with like discounts on washing machines and bras. Right. It was like, that's it. So we would try to put on something and more people came. It was amazing. Of course, with COVID, all this stuff is changed, but, we'll get back there again. But, the thing is to always be mining, which I think is what you have done with your whole life, of what's really being said here, what is really valuable. And then having the enthusiasm to say, oh my gosh, don't miss this. Because you can get very, what do you call it? Kind of just critical and feel like, oh, I've done my part. I've said, ugh, this is, and so it's great to be with people who see some magic and beauty and importance in even the small things and can magnify that. And I'm hoping that our city, like I have to tell you, we honored, do you know who Ernestine Shepherd is? Go look her up. Oh my God. Okay. She's the world's oldest bodybuilder. Yeah. And she's got a body like a 22-year-old would beg for. I mean, literally, I've been with her. It's not, Photoshop or something. And she's also very feminine, really beautiful. And she didn't start working out till she was 60. And wow. And she's as lovely inside as out. And I was really upset because she was married to a reverend who has passed away, and she does teach, and she did like a one-armed push-ups, she's just exquisite. And she wears like a bodysuit like they would on Star Trek or something, every little muscle ripple. And I thought, like, why isn't what's Under Armour?
Right.
Girl, and particularly because I thought my crush, what's his name, the actor, who was in wrestling.
The Rock.
The Rock. They had The Rock. The Rock would fall in love with Ernestine, because how can you not? I mean, she's just Google and look at her pictures and stuff. But she struggles every day, and she's a treasure we should have embraced from the beginning. So I really try to look for, both in history, like who were the really brave people who brought some good. So we'll talk more, at another time, but I am so glad to know you and to meet you this way, and wish you,
this has been great,
just every unexpected joy and ease that you get to do your best self,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
With that girlfriend,
we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
100 weddings a year at our museum.
I mean, one of my friends I did my morning cardio walk with. I mentioned that this interview was coming up. I was looking forward to it. I was a little nervous, and she was just like, "I love that place." What? And then my girlfriend texted me. She was like, "So, how's that interview looking like? Can't wait to hear it." I was like, "Oh, more pressure." And part of it is, I was like, all of these podcasts are a service to you. She's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "I'm just interviewing places you like at this point."
Oh, I love that.
So it's like, I've had the owner from Greedy Reads on not too long ago, and the owner from Be Willow on not too long ago. And it's like, I'm just hitting your places. And I'm like, I'll try to do this.
Well, come on. So, have you not been? You haven't been to? Have you never been to our museum, Big Loser?
Before COVID, we had it listed as we were going to go there because she wanted to go with me, and it just like schedules lined up. And
yeah, no, so, I'll tell you why. Because we're 25 years old. Like, where have you been? Okay. Hello. I mean, really.
Right.
But come as my guest, and I want you to really feel it, because it's not like any place on earth. We're a national museum, but it's not like any museum you've ever been to, honestly.
Then that's actually absolutely going to happen.
People say it's the most healing place they've ever been. And this is okay. So like Center Stage is great, but they have like a $9 million operating budget. We have a $3 million operating budget, but from Oprah's destinations all the way up to U.S. News and World Report, USA Today, they give one attraction per state. There are 8 national lists in big media, one attraction per state. It could be a ballpark, it could be anything. We're it on all 8. And yet we have the tiniest of all the cultural majors in the state. Isn't that amazing? So we've had to do so much with so little. So come and feel it. And I used all Baltimore architects only. And yet we were the first museum to win the National Award for Excellence from the Urban Land Institute. And wait till you see the life size. It's a black Icarus going up. Was an opera singer and rock singer who was in the Alternative Miss World contest in London. Roy Brown is the model. and it has 15 feet of undulating wings in all the rainbow colors of the mirror with thousands of shards for feathers. And it takes 20 minutes to go up our Marilyn Meyerhoff Stairway to the Stars and then comes down. It's awesome.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And the best tour too.
We're coming.
Okay.
We're coming. We'll both be there because I can't come without her. I have that duty.
Okay.
So I guess that's pretty much, I think I've gotten everything. I think in the conversation, I've gotten everything that I wanted, for this particular podcast. So that's great. I guess, I want to, again, thank you for joining the podcast. Do you have anything you would like to promote before I sign off?
We do have a lot of virtual, and we have some translation things into. We're going to do Sock Monkey Puppet that always draws like 800 intergenerational people to sew, and we're making it 2 days this year. So the best thing is to go to the website because we try to keep that updated. www.avam.org. And I'm such a Luddite. I mean, I can't tell you how to. I think it's really good that I learned Zoom, but then you've been doing this podcast stuff for so long. And we showed, Chris Wilson's work, artwork for the first time in a museum setting, who wrote the master plan. But he's because in the parenting show, so much was about his mom, right? His mom had been such an amazing, brilliant person before she was, brain damaged from a rape and an attack. And he's so, Baltimore, we are so close to being the city that should be the most studied in America for positive turnaround. And we just got to love a lot more and not do the lame PC stuff. I mean, really, honestly, there's so much amazing things to teach the world from here. And I'm glad that you're one of them.
Well, thank you. So I'll do my sign off. This is, I'm sweating. I feel like I've had an experience so far. This is great. I have to change this dress shirt now. So for Rebecca Hoffberger of the American Visionary Art Museum, I am Rob Lee saying that there's art in and around Baltimore. All you have to do is look for it.